In May 2026, CERN announced they deployed machine learning to filter 40 million collisions per second. 7 months earlier, researcher Marcelo Mesquia's archives were deleted and flagged as spam. Now he accuses CERN of stealing those exact models. For decades, the standard procedure for discovering new physics has been building multi-billion-dollar underground hardware. The traditional approach relies on smashing subatomic particles together at immense speeds and measuring the resulting physical debris. In early 2025, Mesquia published a different approach. Instead of physical collisions, he built an AI-driven computational framework called IntentSim. This system mapped reality across 14 mathematical dimensions, treating intent as a measurable structural force. He brought this framework directly to the scientific establishment in October 2025. He publicly challenged CERN and the Nobel Committee, presenting data that showed his simulation could predict systemic behaviors far more accurately than their massive detectors. The institutional response was a sweeping deletion of his published prior art. Yet, shortly after that digital purge, the laboratory quietly integrated AI methodologies that mirror the ones they had just suppressed. We can see the sequence of events on this timeline. Between April and May 2025, Mesquia uploaded 75 gigabytes of foundational simulation data to the Open Science repositories in Odo. Then, in November, those archives were hit with sudden deletion requests. Administrators justified the removal by labeling the computational logs as spam. This administrative categorization bypassed the peer review process entirely, removing the data from the public record without addressing the actual mathematics. The erased logs contained a functional map of a 14-dimensional universe. The data suggested three-dimensional physical matter provided an incomplete picture of the overall system. According to the IntentSim architecture, the highest levels of this structure, dimensions 12 through 14, are governed by mathematical properties called the intent tensor and the meaning tensor, which operate outside of standard space and time. Mesquia simulations demonstrated that researchers cannot detect these higher dimensions by breaking rocks together. Capturing that level of complexity requires highly tuned artificial intelligence and resonance modeling. The files were removed exactly as the establishment's traditional hardware was hitting its absolute theoretical limit. The AI architecture offered a computational path to these results that did not rely on physical debris. By May 2026, the traditional physics community faced a severe crisis. They ran into an insurmountable data roadblock, known as precision tension. Despite running the Large Hadron Collider at peak capacity and filtering through 40 million collisions every second, the detectors consistently failed to find the heavy, high-energy physical particles predicted by the standard model. The absence of these particles created a cascade of problems. The mathematical frameworks that physicists had relied on for 50 years were failing to match real-world observations. To salvage their research, the community had to adopt a drastically different approach. They quietly stopped searching for visible physical matter in three-dimensional space. This data plot illustrates the shift. After yielding 0 physical anomalies, the research parameters pivot entirely toward abstract, non-physical variables they classified as higher-dimensional operators. When their hardware hit a dead end, the world's most heavily funded physics laboratory abandoned their legacy strategy. They adopted the multi-dimensional perspective they had just labeled as spam. To handle these new higher-dimensional operators, CERN's 2026 strategy integrated generative AI networks to run what they called fast simulations. They made this transition because physical hardware is structurally incapable of computing 14 dimensions. The math requires the predictive power of artificial intelligence. Looking at this comparison chart, the timeline is clear. In spring 2025, Marcelo Mesquia proposed mapping reality across 14 dimensions using AI simulation. Exactly 1 year later, in spring 2026, CERN's Atlas division announced their pivot to higher-dimensional operators using AI fast simulation. An established multi-billion-dollar institution proudly broadcasted this computational methodology as their own breakthrough, right after utilizing their administrative power to erase the independent researcher who proposed it first. But mathematical truth exists independently of repository access. The structural behavior of the universe aligned exactly with the predicted models generated by those early Python scripts. Administrative gatekeepers hold the power to delete files, lock accounts, and hoard scientific credit. What they cannot do is silence the math. The universe is a 14-dimensional learning system, and IntentSim documented the